So, but Spider-Man in particular, it has just such a weird costume. I think that it's hard to adapt without computer animation. It
Yeah.
really is because material just doesn't do that. It doesn't look like that. Before that, we had the Spider-Man TV show. Do you remember they even after the TV show, Marvel used that particular Spider-Man costume for everything. Oh my God! Every time there was a live appearance of Spider-Man, it was that costume, and it was the ugliest thing. They did it on live events. They put it on toys, and it was hideous.
Uh,
So look at the Spider-Man from the MCU. At least he looks like Spider-Man,
I
you
want
know?
to leap over buildings, want to fly over the shores, save the people from the villains, catch the crooks who rob the stores, write my name upon the sky, and when you call me, I'll be there, faster than a lightning flash, rushing through the cool night air. So start ignition, count to zero. I just wanna be a superhero.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Titular Characters. I am the adorable Eva Webb, and today we are here with blogger, comic book lover, and film historian, the beautiful, the talented, and the ever-engaging Ren Chandler. How are you, darling?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
I am loving life. So this weekend's been kind of busy. I have had so much going on, and I really appreciate you making the time to deal with my craziness on my side. Also, we are now officially, I think, on the third take of trying to get recording to work right. So again, I appreciate your incredible patience there. So I wanted to talk about the exciting thing that is your blog and those movie reviews. What have you been up to with them?
Okay, so I do a blog where I review movies. Most of the year it's just one a year. But every July or summer and every October I do a series of horror movie reviews. July it's a themed reviews, usually centered around a particular franchise. So this year it was the Universal Monsters. Because of COVID anxiety, I sort of became a summer fall thing, and then eventually I had to tie in the end of that to the beginning of my regular horror movie reviews where I just pick like random movies and I review them. So this year I did films like Psycho to start off. I also did the the Silence of the Lambs trilogy, or not the trilogy. I did Manhunter and then Silence of the Lambs, and then I did Red Dragon, which is a remake of which is another adaptation of the book Manhunter that was based on. It's very confusing. Um, and I'm finishing it off now with the transgender vampire movie Bit, which I really liked and I saw earlier this year.
That sounds like fun. Wait, there's a transgender vampire movie? I have to get on top of that.
Yes, I highly recommend it. It's very good. I believe it's on Amazon right now.
Nice, nice. I will definitely check that out. That is like um, top of my list as far as topics. Anything transgender is going to be something I'm always ecstatic to watch. Hopefully, I always cross my fingers as far as portrayals because I never know if it's going to be, transgender topics done well or, written by a clueless cis person.
Yeah, I just saw Silence of the Lambs, and I was thinking a little bit about that. So Bit is really good, though. It's really good representation.
So the other thing you were talking about, and I know this is sort of meta because we were having sound problems while we're having this amazing conversation. So you were talking about also watching like the Venture Brothers and Johnny Quest, and I was saying how like I haven't watched them yet, but it's something I've felt sort of compelled to lie about, because you're just not going to get the nerd credibility, without watching Venture Brothers. It's just one of those shows. It's sort of like Star Wars that way. How did you like it? Do you have to watch like any of the older stuff to sort of feel caught up as an entry point, or can you start from
So
episode one?
it's a I could kind of talk about the show because there's a lot of answers to that. So sort of Venture Brothers is like my favorite all-time show. I've seen it over the past like year and a half. I've seen it all the way through multiple times. Unlike stuff like Harvey Birdman or a Space Ghost Coast to Coast, it's not like a full-on comedy. Like it's not like an absurdist comedy in that vein. It's a satire. It's basically, you have the Johnny Quest archetypes. There's like Dr. Venture, who's the Benton Quest. You have his sons Dean and Hank, who are like Johnny Quest and Haji. I think his name is Haji. And then you have Brock Sampson, who's the Race Bannon. And they sort of like do the Johnny Quest stuff, but the creators of the show describe it as what happens in between those like adventures that they go on, like what happens like in their like day-to-day lives. So it kind of just starts out as that, like just basically a Johnny Quest satire where they all go on adventures. They fight this guy who wears a butterfly suit called the Monarch, and then like halfway through season one, it kind of starts to become more of a general satire of pulp and comic tropes, and that's where it kind of starts out.
I
Like
love me some pulp and comic tropes.
oh yeah, it's full of like these little references to stuff like references like Marvel comics is like an especially big reference. There's a character named Dr. Orpheus who is a parody of Doctor Strange, that is like and like he has this team called the Order of the Triad. It contains a parody of like the Ancient One and Blade.
Nice.
So like it's Marvel comics. You also have a lot of like 80s rock references, like 70s and 80s rock references. So like there's a character who like spends most of the series imitating, like looking exactly like David Bowie. The entire joke is like whether or not they are David Bowie.
Related to that, there was another show on Cartoon Network, and it was about this heavy metal band, and they would go down to like the depths of hell, and
I know what you're talking about. I haven't seen it. I don't think they're related, but it might be like the same general idea.
nice.
So
I don't remember the name of that one, but it was so much fun. I think somebody will probably
Metalocalypse.
know in the comics. Yeah, that's the one.
Metalocalypse. I haven't seen that. I have to watch it sometime. I hear it's very good. But Venture Brothers, I don't think you have to definitely see the whole thing because like later seasons are like very continuity heavy. Like you have to have seen like all of at least like some of the previous few seasons to get like like what's going on.
That sounds like fun. It's things I've been meaning to check out. I mean, it's only today that I finally got around to watching Rick and Morty. Rick and Morty was one of those shows that had a lot of hype when it came out, especially in the nerd community. And I was going to wait until there were like 2 seasons of it. So I put it on the back burner and completely forgot about it until today. So I picked it up, and it was a surprisingly good study in Nietzschean nihilism. I was really impressed, and it's so meta and so subtle that if you know what you're looking for, it just sort of jumps right out in your face. But
Yeah.
on the other hand, if you don't understand, what that is, you can still enjoy the show.
It's a good mix of like highbrow and lowbrow humor. Like it definitely has like the highbrow, like what you said, Nietzschean and nihilism, but then also has like the good, really good lowbrow humor. So you only seen the first season?
Okay, so I saw the first season completely, watched every episode back to back, and now I'm about, I think, 4 or 5 episodes into the second season, so I'm probably 14 or 15 episodes in.
Yeah, because that God comment, there's a really good quote from Rick, and like later in the second season where he says, "My God is the biggest dick that never existed."
It's great. It's great. I liked the season ender for season one, where
Yeah, it's
there's
a really good
Rick
one.
is going around the multiverse killing other Ricks. And in the end, we learn that the Rick who was doing that was in fact a robot who was controlled by by an evil version of Morty.
Yeah.
And that evil version of Morty just sort of stuck around in the background, and you didn't even know who he was until they have that eureka moment at the end. But nobody ever suspects Morty because Rick doesn't value Morty's intelligence.
And that comes back like in later season, and I can't remember which one, but I've really like enjoyed Rick and Morty. I have my problems with it, but like it's always like a great show to like rewatch. It's like you can pick up one episode and it's just like you can watch it again and it still remains like at least slightly fresh or slightly entertaining.
So the one I left off with today was the one where they go to like a space casino and they try playing the video games there, and Rick puts Morty on a video game station.
Roy.
Yeah, the Roy thing.
I love that. I love that. It's such a great scene.
It was nice. It was a lot of fun. Oh, did I tell you that a couple of months ago I decided that I was going to start rebuilding my comic book collection, and because I lost it like after my first marriage. And,
yeah, you told me you were like going through all of the Daredevils.
Yeah, so I started collecting all of the Daredevils. As far as Daredevil in particular goes, I am 35% of the way there on the first 200 issues. So I'm very, very excited now about that. But the other news is that I filled up my first long box of comics. So I got like a bunch of Daredevils, a bunch of Incredible Hulks, a really nice run of Fantastic Four from issues like 150 all the way to 300. I own all of it. I got the first 74 issues of New Mutants. So I feel very, very accomplished. I filled up that long box pretty good.
New Mutants is one I need to read. I know it was like...
It's some of the best Chris Claremont writing, I think, that you'll ever read. It's soulful. It's thought out. My favorite arc in early New Mutants was Legion. Legion is such an amazing character. He's really off the wall. You can't tell if he's a hero, if he's a villain, if he's both, or if he's a victim, which he sort of is. He's Xavier's kid, and he's this super powerful mutant. He's sort of like Crazy Jane from Doom Patrol. A lot of the same kind of setup there.
Age of Apocalypse. I remember him from Age of Apocalypse. I think he started that.
Yeah, it's good stuff. He's got these split personalities, and all of the personality shards have this distinct, not just distinct personalities, but also distinct powers. He's, in terms of power level, he's right up there with Franklin Richards, I think, as one of the most powerful mutants in the Marvel Universe.
Speaking of Franklin Richards, have you read A History of the Marvel Universe?
I have not.
It's really good. I'm actually just staring at it right now. It's like right across from me in my room. It's an incredible series. Mark Waid wrote it. Javier Rodriguez drew it. It's a really great book. It has a lot of incredible artwork. It's very like, and it's also very like good at like conveying the continuity of Marvel. Like I remember like towards the very end, I like cried a little bit because like the ending was so good. That hasn't happened since I read Zot by Scott McCloud like a great many years ago.
Nice. I think at this point, one of the new things I'm doing is I'm sort of in the midst of falling down a Betty Page rabbit hole.
Oh.
Betty Page has been one of those characters that has been there, I think, at least as long as I've been reading comics. Late 80s, early 90s, stuff like that. She's always been there, but it's never been a title that I've really taken seriously or wanted to read. Sort of like another one like that is Vampirella is another one like that. I think Olivia's still around, but there's just sort of a handful of books like that. So anyway, I interviewed David Avalone, sorry. And he's the one who's writing a huge chunk of this Betty Page stuff, and it is captivating. Um, the regular Betty Page stuff is fun, and the Betty Page Unbound is sort of like it's a crisis event or maybe like DC Metal, except it's with Betty Page, which is just ridiculous. She goes up against these Lovecraftian creatures, um, and yeah, it's ridiculous and it's fun. It's really really entertaining. I am engaged. I am entertained.
Yeah. I have to read that. I really like the Betty Page stuff. It's always fun.
Oh, it totally is. It totally is, and I'm not just saying that because I know the writer, um, but it's a lot of fun. It's legit a ton of fun. Probably the most fun I've had reading comics in at least 3 weeks. Because I'm always enjoying reading comics. That's what I do.
Yeah. Rereading Swamp Thing. It so holds up a lot. Had a nice appearance from Etrigan the Demon to, Jack Kirby's famous horror creation from the early 70s. The volume I'm reading right now is like a homage to Walt Kelly's Pogo in it. Have you read this Alan Moore Swamp Thing run?
I have read it, but it has been ages and ages since I have picked up Swamp Thing. I feel like I want to again. I feel like I want to revisit Swamp Thing and Doom Patrol and a lot of those older, key books. Maybe I should even collect them. I don't know. What do you think? Do you prefer those in trade paperback, or is it the kind of thing you want to invest in?
With me, I've only recently started to read single issues. The thing is because it's a weird story. When I was a kid, I used to have these what were called the Amar Chitrakatha comics. In India, there were like these two guys who realized like Indian kids knew more about like the Greeks and the Roman gods than they did about Hindu mythology, their own mythology. So they created this series of comics called Amar Chitrakatha, which basically described Hindu myth. So it's like all these mythology comics, and my mom had a whole bunch of them, and she'd give them to me to like say, oh, read up on where your name comes from, or like read up on this myth about this holiday. So I'd read that, and I remember like the pages were like incredibly rough, or they were like really weird to touch because these comics are very very old. They were like from the 70s, I think. So they were very old and they were very crisp. So that kind of gave me an aversion to single issues. It was only like recently that I mainly read comics either through like the Kindle, through online, or I read them like on the trade paperbacks. Only recently I've started like collecting individual issues, and I've started to take them out and I read them, and I don't have that sensational problem anymore. Sorry, I went through that whole story, but like that's sort of my position on the trade paperback single issue stuff.
Did you ever read? There was one title that came out of India. It hit my radar. I want to say it was circa somewhere between 2002 and 2005, just to give you a range. And that was the Indian Spider-Man. Did you ever read?
I've read it. Yeah, I've read some of it. So weird.
It was weird. It was just such a. It was almost like a reverse engineering of the character for a completely different audience.
It was like the idea of like the legendary director Satyajit Ray. Like apparently he liked the Spider-Man comics, and he suggested to Stan Lee like there should be an Indian Spider-Man. So
I think the last time we saw him was in the Spider-Verse event with Dan Slott.
Yeah, he was in Spider-Verse.
I don't remember if they killed him or not, because they killed a bunch of them. Like
Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. That's the one I remember.
right on. It's funny because India is not really a country that you associate with comics, but comics are sort of universal. They're everywhere. When I was a teenager, I spent like 5 years in Israel, and they had comics there, but at the time they did not have a lot of superhero comics. They just had they had a couple of them. at the time. There have been a lot of them since. Uri Fink did one. Mike Netzer tried to do one. But just for some reason, the military and the romance comics and the horror comics were always just bigger sellers there than they were superheroes. But when I talked to people about it, it was just like, okay, superheroes, I don't get it. I mean, yeah, I get it, but okay, why? Well, what relevance does that have to me?
Yeah, I lived in India for about 2 years in high school. And superheroes are kind of big in India, like, or at least like when you go to a comic section, it would be full of like superhero titles. But you'd also have like European titles, like you'd have Asterix and Obelix. You have a Tintin. Oh, Tintin was really big in India. Like you could find it in like any bookstore. You could find like a Tintin album. You wouldn't really have manga. I never really saw manga much there. It was mostly either American or it was European comics.
I have always loved Asterix. That was another one. I discovered that one in a bookshop in Jerusalem, of all places. uh, but yeah, it's not a title that's really what I would consider huge here. But oh my God, it's funny. Little Vikings, the little skinny tiny Viking and
Yeah.
the big one.
I
So
know, I
much
know
fun.
it's like huge in like Belgium where it came from. Belgium or France. I can't remember which country, but
I think that one I read somewhere. I don't remember where, but I think that one's actually the most translated comic on planet Earth. It has appeared in more languages than any other title ever produced.
yeah, that's really cool. I mostly read in terms of European comics. I read a lot of Tintin by Hergé. They're good, but like it kind of has like a set plot, and then it suddenly just goes into like some weird digression that just returns to the main plot, like nothing happened. Like Tintin and like all his companions, like they would like we must go to get the thing, and then they'd like stop for like a minute to like do the dumb comedy routine, and then they just walk right back to the main plot and then just continue. And you get into Mobius recently, like the science fiction of Mobius, the heavy metal stuff. The thing is, it's really expensive to get in this country.
Heavy metal's always fun though.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of their stuff. It looks really like extreme, like all the like the fantasy settings, like the big spaceships. It all looks very like intense, and it looks very cool.
Yeah, it's that's not one that I've spent a ton of time reading. I wish I had some encyclopedic knowledge for you on that one, but I have seen it over the years. I think when I was 16, I told you last time about how my dad used to buy me comics when I was a kid and a teenager, and
Yeah,
that was one of the ones he picked up was heavy metal, and I loved how weird the fantasy art style of it was. It was
yeah,
like sort of 2000 AD with glossier pages,
yeah. Really like the.
like 2000 AD better though, personally.
I haven't read much 2008. I have like a couple of Alan Moore stories from like his time there. I have like Future Shocks, and I have a series called Deer and Quench, but that's really it in terms of 2000 AD stuff.
Right on. I think to this day I am still sort of obsessed with Judge Dredd. Judge
Uh,
Dredd is uh, Judge Dredd is hard to get right, but when they do get it right, it's a lot of fun.
a lot about like the mythology of like Judge Dredd, like it's like the post-apocalyptic future and everything.
Yeah, all the big mega cities, and how you've got this wasteland outside of the cities, but all of the U.S. population is sort of consolidated into three megacities. I think you've got Megacity 1, Megacity 2, and I don't remember if Megacity 3 was Canada or Mexico, but it was one of them. I think it was Mexico, and you had just this ridiculous system of martial justice, and you had this notion of cops being judge, jury, and executioner, and it's terrifying, and it's sort of I mean, at the one hand, it is sort of dark and terrifying, but on the other hand, it's very, very funny, but funny in a way that you're sort of ashamed to laugh.
Satirical.
Exactly. Exactly. So, like on the one hand, you've got these judges that are doling out martial law on the streets. They're killing people for the most minor offenses, like protesting. But on the other, you've got this really weird dichotomy going on where technology has made things easier, even if there's a weird cost to it. Like how pretty much everything you own is dead people. They have this giant recycling plant that recycles everything. It takes garbage, it takes sewage, it takes people, and it turns them into consumer products, which are then sold, and they call it recyc. So, like when you see a Judge movie, a Judge Dredd movie, and they don't explain what recyc is, that's what recyc is.
That sounds amazing.
It really is. It's neat. And the IDW Judge Dredd series is one I thought I wouldn't like, but it is fabulous. It is the best, I think, widely available Judge Dredd title in America that you can get. The Fleetway editions are still the best Judge Dredd, but the IDW is very, very similar.
I have to check out some of those collections. I'm trying to read consistently so that I could kind of go through each of these comics. I also have the reading challenge on Goodreads that I'm doing. I would read 100 books in a year. And that's like right now I'm at 42, so I have 2 months left to finish everything off.
Are there any titles that really stand out on on that particular reading list?
Well, I read 2 books by the cartoonist Tom Scioli twice, so there's that. One was a really good series. It was called American Barbarian. It's like so Tom Scioli he's known for he's basically like a Jack Kirby imitator, but he's not like like John Buscema, or he's not like Walt Simonson, who like sort of also do Kirby like art, but they sort of do it in their own style. But he kind of does like the full imitation. Like he tries to get like the poses, the shadows, like the looks of the characters right, but he's kind of does it in like a very looser fashion. Like so the art isn't like in his later work the art isn't inked, so it's all pencil. It looks like like someone drew it in like their notebook. It's like the doodle someone writes in their notebook. So American Barbarian is kind of like one of his books from. It was like a web comic, I think, and then it was published by IDW. Do you know like stuff like Thundar the Barbarian, or Kamandi the Last Boy on Earth? It's kind of in that vein. Like it's a post-apocalyptic story about this hero who's like it's a standard hero's journey. Like their whole family is completely destroyed, so they have to go out and they get revenge. But it's so funny though. Like the villain is named Two Tank Omen, like, and he's a pharaoh, and he has like 2 tanks for feet, and it's like an ancient Egyptian theme because his name is like Two Tank Omen, like Tutankhamen. It's hilarious.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, it's full of like really funny moments like that. I really recommend it. It's like an incredible work. Like I had to read it twice because of how good it was.
Nice.
So Tom Scioli, who did the book I just described, American Barbarian, also did biography of Jack Kirby that came out this year from 1 Second Comics, or
Nice.
One Speed. I know a lot about Kirby, especially after I read Mark Evaner's biography. But this actually taught me a lot more. Like I learned that he apparently like the first superhero he did was a Blue Beetle, which is like not really a character you associate with him. It's apparently like he based the relationship between Thor and Loki on Stan Lee and Larry and his brother Larry Lieber's relationship, where
Interesting.
I highly recommend it. Like it's especially good. Like it describes like his service in World War II, his involvement at the beginning of romance comics, and sort of like his late sort of like his creative process during like the 1970s and the 1980s, during like his hate and during like his later years.
Awesome.
There's that. But read recently the X-Men Grand Design, the first two parts of that. That was done by Tom Scioli's friend Ed Piskor. Have you read the Grand Designs?
No, I have not.
So there's two current characters. Like Scioli did the Fantastic Four Grand Design, and then Ed Piskor sort of started off with the X-Men Grand Design. I enjoyed it. Ironically, it was like a negative review that finally convinced me to like go out and get both of these books and then read them, and they're actually pretty good. Like the whole run of the like the whole history of the X-Men, right? Like you're probably like aware of that.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely.
So Grant,
I've read a lot of X-Men and a lot of mutant books over the years.
All right, so I think you'd probably like this then. It sort of details the X-Men's history chronologically from like, from like the beginning through like the Lee and Kirby years and then like into like the famed Claremont Byrne wine run from the 70s. There's like a lot of condensing of various famous moments, but if you can kind of get past that, you can kind of enjoy it.
Is that sort of like they did with Spider-Man Life Story, where they sort of condensed everything and threw it into a different timeline and did stuff like that?
A little bit. This is like the grand designs are more like reciting like the important parts of these characters' histories from directly, like they're just chronicling these characters' histories. Spider-Man Life Story, it was a lot more vignettes. Like it was more like vignettes, like kind of tied into the the stories.
I was really impressed with Chip Zdarsky's writing on that one. He's rapidly becoming one of my favorite Spider-Man writers, just in general.
Oh yeah, I really like that that he sort of incorporates not only like the eras they were made, the Spider-Man stories were written in, but also like the important Spider-Man stories of those particular time periods, like Craven's Last Hunt, or the Miles Morales, like that was really good the way he integrated that.
I was really thrilled with it. Just the whole thing and the way it ends was, I mean, we've seen Spider-Man die before, but
Yeah.
this one I think just sort of brought tears to my eyes.
Definitely, yeah.
I think I should probably read more modern Spider-Man than I do because I know I would love it. I think part of the reason I don't though is because Spider-Man has this way of just sucking me into his universe. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If I jump down the Spider-Man rabbit hole, it's going to be weeks before I jump out.
Yeah, I know what you mean. That's sort of me with the various forms of the Fantastic Four. I've been trying to read up on like all the various books that come out.
Oh, that reminds me. I got a copy of Fantastic Four #1, the new series, signed by Mark Bagley, and I got the little certificate of authenticity or anything. I think I only spent like $4 on eBay.
That's really cool.
I am so thrilled. I also found Midtown Comics, which is a great place to buy signed comics. Who knew, right?
Yeah.
They're pretty awesome. So you collect mainly the trade paperbacks? Is that what you were saying?
Mostly, yeah. Only recently I started collecting, because like not everything is collected into trade paperbacks. So recently I've just started to collect single issues too. One I'm hoping to get in single issues is the Rachel Pollack Doom Patrol, because like she was the first trans. She was like a trans woman who did like a major superhero run. That's very rare. So
I'll have to check that out too.
what were you saying?
I said I'll have to check that out too.
No, I didn't. Before I interrupted you.
Oh, I don't remember. I'm sorry.
That's fine. Let's see. I also got recently. Oh, we were talking about Spider-Man. I recently read Craven's Last Hunt. It was a really good. I kind of like through like osmosis. I knew like what the basic story was, but like reading it unfold, like it's actually really well paced and well plotted. Sort of weird, like it's spread out across what is it here, like a web of Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man, and Spectacular Spider-Man. That must get really confusing.
Yeah, it does. And God, now there's so many more of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, we even have Sensational Spider-Man now, I think. I just picked up a bunch of those. I think that one used to be Web and they changed it. I don't remember. It's hard to keep up with this stuff. It really is. But yeah, Craven's Last Hunt, I think, was one of the few Spider-Man stories, I think, where I was really worried that they were just going to kill the character.
Yeah.
You know, because what Craven puts him through is insanity.
Yeah. And then how he tries to take up the mantle of Spider-Man. That's what that was a part of the story I didn't know. Like he puts on the suit and then he tries to be Spider-Man and then he actually ultimately succeeds and then that's when he decides to commit suicide.
And then he lets Spider-Man off the hook with his confession.
Yeah. And then some really good artwork by Mark Zeck, which I thought was really cool. The one Spider-Man run I really want to read is I want to read the original first couple issues, like the ones between Stan Lee and Steve Ditko. Because I read there's I have one of the Marvel Masterworks of that run, and it's very different from the way the characters kind of entered popular culture. Like the original run, it's a lot more, it's a lot different.
I feel like in general, Spider-Man didn't really hit the mainstream until John Romita.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
I feel like John Romita did as much or more than Steve Ditko did to define what Spider-Man is. The early stories are great, if you can tolerate the really haphazard Steve Ditko art, which I've never been a fan of. But John Romita, he redesigned the costume dramatically. I mean, if you look at Ditko Spider-Man and John Romita Spider-Man, it's the John Romita Spider-Man that you see in the MCU and pretty much every other Spider-Man movie they've ever made.
Yeah, and in the cartoon too.
Exactly. Ditko Spider-Man has a lot more webs on him. He's harder to draw. Sometimes artists like Todd McFarlane sort of harken back. The thing that always got me about Ditko Spider-Man, of course, the thing is I didn't start reading Spider-Man until the 90s. Well, like the late 80s. No, that's not true. I guess I was reading them in the early 80s, but I wasn't cognitively reading them for myself until the 90s.
So it was the Todd McFarlane, Eric Larson, like that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Todd McFarlane, Eric Larson. Who was the other one that came right after Eric Larson? I do not remember his name, but all of those guys. So that was Spider-Man, but in media, Spider-Man had not changed since John Romita. So you had this weird disconnect between Spider-Man media, television, cartoons, media, and then you had the Spider-Man comic book, which was sort of in between. McFarlane and the artists of those eras, they would draw the Ditko Spider-Man, but with much, much bigger eyes. In fact, Spider-Man's eyes at one point took up 3/4 of his face. They were just huge. Whereas Ditko would draw lots of black and really small.
He would draw these really small eyes.
Yeah, and sometimes he would draw little holes in the eyes, especially early on. If you look at those first couple of issues of Ditko Spider-Man, Spider-Man has holes in the white fabric over his eyes, and that totally changes when Ditko leaves. Or even
There's that really famous panel of him confronting the guy who killed Uncle Ben, and you can see the eye holes coming out.
Exactly. I think it's just fun to watch how these costumes develop over the years.
Oh yeah.
Different, more people doing it. You have sort of a precedent that gets set after a while. You know, where originally artists were referring back and copying the original. But now we've had so many generations of artists copying artists that when people copy today, they just pick a version of Spider-Man they like and go with that. And I think that's healthy. You know?
Definitely. Like, I liked, I think, like, the Into the Spider-Verse, like, that costume was also the Ramita costume, like, with the mid-sized eyes, like the kind of brighter red color on it, like that was very much the Ramita one for like the old Spider-Man movie.
Yeah, that's true. I loved Into the Spider-Verse. Oddly enough, not even for Spider-Man. I liked it for Spider-Woman because I had been totally neglecting Spider-Woman for years at that point. She had been one of my favorite classic characters growing up. I went out of my way to collect every issue of the original series. At one point, I had the first one signed by Archie Goodwin, which for me was such a boon because I got to meet Archie Goodwin at a convention, and
Oh, so cool.
he was the
That's so
nicest
cool.
guy. He was so gracious. Um, so like, I had like all this experience with Spider-Woman, and I started reading Spider-Verse, and yeah, it's still Jessica Drew, um, but she's hotter now. She's prettier. She's more in charge of herself and her character, and she has new, much sexier powers. And I really enjoyed that. I thought that was a ton of fun reading that particular version of Jessica Drew, and thank God that's the one we got back just recently. So that's the one I'm reading right now is the new Spider Woman, which is better than I thought it would be. It's a good title.
That's awesome.
Mhm.
You were talking about the Spider-Man costumes and how it kind of. I was thinking about it, like the first Spider-Man comic and really like the first comic I ever read. Period. I was the Ultimate Spider-Man or like the trade of Ultimate Spider-Man, and I remember like because I just seen like the Raimi movie, so my sister gave it to me because she's not really into comics, so she just gave it to me to read. And I remember like after seeing like the Raimi movies, I was kind of I was 6 at the time, so I was confused. Like, what? Wait, Spider-Man's comic, like costume, it was like red. It was bright red, and like it had like bright blue, and like in the movie, it was like it was like a dark red and like a darker, like a dark blue, and that really confused me. Like the eyes were like not exactly right from like the movie.
Well, in defense of the Raimi movies, though, but Spider-Man in particular, it has just such a weird costume. I think that it's hard to adapt without computer animation. It
Yeah.
really is because material just doesn't do that. It doesn't look like that. Before that, we had the Spider-Man TV show. Do you remember they even after the TV show, Marvel used that particular Spider-Man costume for everything. Oh my God! Every time there was a live appearance of Spider-Man, it was that costume, and it was the ugliest thing. They did it on live events. They put it on toys, and it was hideous.
Uh,
So look at the Spider-Man from the MCU. At least he looks like Spider-Man, you know?
I, I saw like a couple weeks ago. I think you saw this too. Like like for the next movie, like Doctor Strange will be his like new mentor. Like, does he really need a mentor every movie? Like, can he just do something by himself? Like,
I am completely ready to give up utterly and completely on the MCU. I hate these MCU Spider-Man movies. I do. I feel like they took more from Miles Morales than they ever did from Peter Parker.
yeah,
And that's fine. But, if you want to make a Miles Morales Spider-Man movie, just do that. This middle ground,
made one. It was really good.
man. What's that?
They made one Into the Spider Verse. It was really good.
I know, it was fantastic. I actually think Miles Morales is a more compelling character than Peter Parker at this point. Just the way they've laid him out on film and in the books. He's engaging, he's new, he's exciting. His adventures are fun. I like him.
I love Miles Morales, and I completely agree. Like, he's far better Spider. He's far more interesting and contemporary Spider-Man than Peter Parker. Like, and I completely agree. Like with the MCU Spider-Man, I think they're fun, but at the same time, it's like it feels like this character is just kind of he's. I don't want to. I don't know if he's like the worst Spider-Man movie Spider-Man so far. Like, but like even like the Andrew Garfield one, which those movies aren't great, but like he seemed like a interesting Spider-Man, but like basically they turned Spider-Man into like Tony Stark Jr. like just like Iron Man, but like younger, and like that's not Spider-Man at all.
Well, that's they started that in the Ultimate Universe, I think.
Yeah,
Um, you had Peter Parker, and Peter Parker was totally unprepared, and Peter Parker went to Tony Stark, who gave him the gear and the better costume and all that stuff. But the thing that everybody forgets about that particular incarnation of Spider-Man was because I think, just based on my reading of it, because he had so many mentors and he wasn't out there developing these things on his own, he was ultimately unprepared, and that's what got him killed, which
yeah,
gave us the motivation for the Miles Morales character. And I thought that was a really good, really workable way to work through a full arc on that character. Um, I just don't see a character like that, Peter Parker or not, being the mainline Spider-Man. I would like to see something a little truer to form with Spider-Man. I think I'd like to see Spider-Man just be Spider-Man. Peter Parker's story isn't that bad. I'm totally okay with a younger Aunt May. That works. That makes sense. For some reason, we're keeping Aunt May around. Great. That's wonderful. Make her younger, de-age her, perfect. But if I'm watching Peter Parker, I want to see Peter Parker. I don't want to see a middle ground of every other Spider-Man. I don't want to see elements of Miles Morales or Ben Riley or any of the numerous others that have appeared over the years. I want to see my guy, Peter Parker. And I don't think that's an unreasonable ask for movie adaptations, television, and the MCU.
yeah, yeah. That's not unreasonable. Hopefully the next movie is good. Like it's probably not gonna happen, but I'm hoping like they finally bring in like the Daredevil characters, like because I always liked when like Spider-Man interacted with like the Daredevil universe. Like it was such a weird dissonance there, and it was kind of interesting. Could have like a court scene where it's like Spider-Man is like on trial for something. It turns out like Wilson Fisk was behind the whole thing, and he was trying to get rid of Spider-Man because he doesn't, he has bad experience with people with masks. So
Have you read Spider-Gwen at all?
not yet, but I've heard it's really good.
It's so much fun. So I was talking to last week. I spoke to Kurt from the Welcome to Geektown podcast, and it was funny because we were talking about Spider-Gwen, and the reasons that I liked it were precisely the reasons he didn't. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
because what it did was it sort of took the idea of Spider-Man and the universe, and it rearranged all the characters ever so slightly that they were a little more unpredictable and you couldn't quite recognize them anymore, like making Matt Murdock the Kingpin, for example. And
Oh.
oh yeah, it was good. Um, and making Peter Parker the Lizard and using that as pathos for Gwen Stacy, which sort of turns that whole relationship upside down. I liked it a lot. I highly recommend it. I just got the first trade paperback, and I am counting the moments to read it to my daughter. I'm very excited about it. If you do buy it, my recommendation would be to try to find a used bookstore for it rather than a comic book specific outlet. You can always get better deals that way.
Oh, okay.
I mean, unless you really care about the condition of it. But when it comes to trades, personally, I don't really care if they're a little mucked up, as long as they're readable.
Yeah. Like, the only trade I've really heard bad things of was the trade of Supreme, the Image comic Rob Liefeld character. Like, apparently that trade is like particularly bad. So like, one of the artists, Rick Vike, he advises just to buy the issues individually instead of like getting the trade.
Really?
Yeah. Apparently it was they used copies of the like the published art and not then they didn't use like the original art to make it, so it looks a lot worse and looks very very like photocopied, so it looks really bad.
That sucks.
Yeah.
Well, Ren, I'm gonna call this a show. I wanted to thank you for coming by. Did you have anything to promote this week?
Um. Just I'm finishing up, as I said, my horror movie reviews this week with Bit. My blog spot is confessionsclutteredmind.blogspot.com. My Twitter handle is at Ren underscore Chandler CHANDLER 4. On my Twitter, I usually talk about comics or movies. I'll occasionally go into digressions about TV shows and astronomy. Um, so those are the two main places you could find me. And again, thank you for having me. I was really looking forward to this, and it didn't disappoint.
I'm so glad. Thank you. It is always a pleasure talking to you. I just have so much fun with the way your mind works. So thank you again. And that's our show. Titular Characters is produced by me, Eva Webb, the adorable one. Cover art for this episode was created by Lexiva, who is super talented. Bumper music is Superhero by Tim McMorris. Join us next time as we talk to one of my favorite people, Josh McPherson. It's going to be about election politics, diversity, and media in general. He is such a fun guest. Anyway, that's it. Come again. And when you do, buy me a zebra. Okay, love ya. Bye.